One. House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, Republican congressman out of California, my guest now, and welcome back here to America's Newsroom. I would take it you support moving forward with this, but just react to what Mike Morrell just tried to describe and explain there.
Well, what Mike Morrell is saying is correct. This is something that we've been talking about, and it's not just Mike Morrell. The RAND report came back just about a year ago. We are less safe today than we were after 9/11. But think about the cause of what's happening. When America steps back, somebody else fills the void. This administration, when it came in, said it had needed a new start with Russia, and look what's happened there with Ukraine. That we had broken the back of Al-Qaeda, and look what's gone on now with Iraq. Or that ISIS was a JV team. Those were all mistakes. But now our enemies don't fear us, but what's worse, our allies don't know if we're actually friends. Look at what's coming up with the GCC. Our own allies are not coming to the meeting because they don't know if we'll be there for them.
The GCC is what's happening Thursday at Camp David, and 4 of the 6 are not sending their leaders. What Americans will say, however, is that you're spying on them. What would you tell them?
Well, there are concerns. And this is what's going to go forward with the Patriot Act this week in the House. We bridged the capability of keeping security for all Americans, but also the privatization of individuals too. How can we marry those two together? I think we found the common ground in this new bill that we have moving forward.
What is that common ground? Explain that in brief.
Well, what's happening with the NSA, they were called about bulk, where they took everybody's phone calls and everybody's messages or the numbers and kept them. Instead of doing that, the phone company keeps it for 18 months. If the NSA feels there is an individual that's communicating with terrorists and others, then they can go get that number with that communication. Not that they're keeping everyone with all the innocent people. We've made that correction.
Right, got it. How is that better?
That's better because they're not keeping all your calls. Now the phone companies keep the record for 18 months. They're not keeping everybody. The privacy concerns are taken. So now you have a protection for your privacy, but we still have the security of knowing when these terrorists are communicating to one another that they have the ability to go in and find it.
Can that pass now in this Congress?
Well, I think it will pass overwhelmingly because it took the security of the country, but also protecting the privacy of the individual. This is what I think America was looking for. How can you find that common ground? You've got people on both sides of the aisle coming together. The House will take this up and move it over to the Senate this week with an overwhelming vote.
Wow, overwhelming vote. Okay, you know, you got a lot of headwinds, right? And this is not like 2001, 2002. And you have Ed Snowden out there leaking all that information, and you have people who essentially think the government has overreached.
Well, what Snowden did was terrible to the country because he told a lot of the terrorists out there of how we're able to track them. So it makes it more difficult, makes the world less safe. Also, what makes the world less safe is movements by this administration. If your enemies aren't fearful of you and your friends don't trust you, that's a very difficult place. If America steps back and you allow someone else to fill the void, you take the negotiations with Iran. While you're negotiating with Iran, what are they doing? Funding the terrorists around the world. We've got to put a stop to this. That's why even in this House you watch the Senate vote 98-1 to put a check and balance on this negotiations, which what the president has, that Iran should never be able to have a nuclear weapon, not an idea that they can have one a decade from now. That is a concern that to me is the biggest concern going forward.
I think my question more went to what people are thinking here at home over the past 13, 14 years. And on that front, there's less trust in big government. And you are now charged with overcoming that. How do you do it?
Well, I think greater accountability, greater transparency, a check and balance when you go through. That's why the new bill that we're moving through, the USA Freedom Act, takes that. It takes the security that you know, the responsibility that government has to make the United States safe, but at the same time the protection an individual have that big government should not be in listening to your phone calls.
Even though
we take that protection.
One last question. Even though just about a week ago a major court ruled against you.
Yeah, that's why if you listen to what the court ruled, it was about the bulk, taking all the bulk phone numbers. This bill takes into effect what the court said so that NSA cannot take the bulk numbers. The phone company keeps their records like they have before. And then if the NSA finds somebody communicating with terrorists, they can go for that number. So it protects you in your own privacy, but also provides the security to the country.
All right, Kevin McCarthy, appreciate you coming on back with us here today, the House Majority Leader. You said it. That'd be an overwhelming vote in the House. We'll watch to see whether that happens. Thank you, sir. We'll speak again.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.